So a couple weeks ago, I made a video trying to go through every Zelda game and look into how much it would cost to buy one of every item, as well as how many required rupees each game had. But let's just say I forgot a couple things. So in this video, I've gone back to the drawing board to do the proper research for every rupee that must be spent in each game. Keep in mind, I'm going through each game's main story, and I will not be taking exploits or glitches into consideration. So with all that being said, let's look definitively at the minimum rupees we will need to beat every Zelda game. This time around, we will be going through them in the order of release. So first up, the Legend of Zelda. The first item I want to talk about is food. Food is needed in level 7 to feed a hungry Goria and will not move until given the item. In order to optimize how many rupees we spend on this, we will need to talk about this game's shop system. There are 4 types of shops, with each having similar items but for different prices and being rarer than the last. The rarest shop is in one location and where we will buy our food for 60 rupees. Now let's talk about arrows. Even though you get the bow from level 1, you can't use it until buying arrows from the shop, as many of you let me know, so we will have to purchase them separately for 80 rupees. The arrows are also interesting because every time we shoot an arrow, we will consume 1 rupee. Luckily, there's only 2 times we need to shoot an arrow, in level 6 to defeat the boss Goma, and in level 9 to deliver the final blow with the silver arrows to Ganon, so 2 rupees are expended here. Some might note that there are other Gomas in level 8, but they can actually be skipped as they just lead to an old man and the magical key, which are completely optional. This puts the minimum rupees to spend at 142. I might as well cover the second quest while I'm here. This time around, we will need to feed 2 hungry Gorias, as there's one in level 3 and in level 8, and they are both required, so we will once again be buying food, but twice this time. Before talking about the bow again, I did want to mention in level 4 and level 7, you will run into some old men who will force you to give your life or your money, but we can simply choose the life option, as even if we only have 3 hearts, this will just leave us at 1 shot. Okay, so the bow is in level 5 this time, and we will need the arrows again, so there goes another 80 rupees. And even though there is a Goma in this level, we can thankfully skip it and save our arrows. But in level 6 and level 7, we have 2 unskippable Gomas that each require 3 arrows, making us spend another 6 rupees. And just like the first quest, the final arrow is the one to Ganon in level 9, which costs us 1 final rupee. So this would put the minimum rupees to spend at 207. As mentioned before, the Adventure of Link actually doesn't have any rupees in the game that can be collected, so technically you can beat the game with 0 rupees spent. And there's actually another game in this series that also doesn't have rupees. Feel free to take a guess in the comments if you think you know the answer, although if you saw my last video, you probably know what game I'm talking about. But anyway, let's move on. For A Link to the Past, the first required purchase is the Zora Flippers. Very silly of me to forget this one, but you can get these from King Zora for 500 rupees, and we will need these for a dungeon in the Dark World later on. And speaking of the Dark World, after being transported here, we can make our way to a maze of brush that leads to the Palace of Darkness. In order to gain access to this dungeon, we will need to spare 10 rupees to Kiki the Monkey. Doing so, we will then make him follow us, and when we reach the dungeon entrance, he will offer to open the door for another 100 rupees. Both of these are required purchases, as Kiki is the only way to open the door, and declining him either time makes him wander off. Lastly, I stated in my other video that the Super Bomb is required to get the silver arrows from the Cursed Fairy. However, many of you let me know you don't technically need these, as Ganon can be defeated with well-timed spin attacks. I did some further investigating on this, and it's kind of a gray area of being an exploit. The reason it works is due to an issue with collision checks in the game, and because the silver arrows are stated in the game to be the method of defeating Ganon, I'm still going to count it as a requirement, meaning we will need the 100 rupees for the Super Bomb after all. So this puts the minimum rupees needed to spend at 710. As mentioned in my last video, the shovel and the bow are both required items to purchase in Link's Awakening. Once we bring the golden leaves back to Richard, he will let us into Pothole Field, where we can dig up the slime key using the shovel. This is bought from the town tool shop for 200 rupees. And for the bow, we will need to buy this item for the last dungeon of the game, Turtle Rock. It is used to solve one puzzle in the dungeon in order to get a required key, and this item is also bought from the same shop for 980 rupees. One thing I didn't mention though was the fact that you can steal items from the shop, so we could get away with taking both the shovel and the bow and not have to spend a single rupee in this game after all, right? Wait, what's that? Oh, that's right. There's actually another expense we have to make in this game, the concert by Mamu to learn the Frog Song of Soul. This is a required song in order to get into Eagle's Tower and to open Turtle Rock, which will cost us another 300 rupees. Going back to stealing items though, I will include a final ranking for both stealing items and not, since it's quite a big difference, and not stealing will allow us to get the extra ending with Marin that requires 0 deaths. So this puts the minimum rupees needed to spend at 300 or 1480. Last time I mentioned Ocarina of Time had one required item to buy, and this was the Deku Shield in order to access the first dungeon. Many of you let me know that while not an item we purchase, we do have to pay for a minigame. In Zoro's domain, we have to play the diving minigame for 20 rupees in order to get the reward, which is the Silver Scale. This is needed to further progress the plot and access the next dungeon. And in case anyone thought that Epona was needed to beat the game, we can access Lake Hylia with the Serenade of Water and cross the Gerudo Bridge with the long shot, making her completely optional. So this puts the minimum rupees needed to spend at 60. And for anyone curious, Master Quest mode has the same 2 required purchase, so even with more involved dungeon layouts, the minimum rupees is still 60. For Majora's Mask, there are a couple of things we actually need to buy. The first is the previously mentioned powder keg. We will need 2 throughout our adventure to access both Romani Ranch on day 1 to get Epona, and at Ikana Valley so we can eventually learn the Elegy of Emptiness. However, we get 1 free keg after getting the certification, so as long as we get it on day 1, we can use this one at Romani Ranch. The powder keg costs 50 rupees at the Clocktown shop in the N64 version, and it only costs 20 rupees from Metagoron in the 3DS version. The reason we need Epona is to access the Great Bay area without using any exploits and to get one of the few required masks, the Garo mask. This mask is gotten from the Gorman brothers by racing them for 10 rupees and grants us access to the Ikana Canyon from this guy. Many of you let me know we do not need the bomb bag for Snowkeep due to having access to the blast mask. However, upon further investigating, we actually need the bomb bags for another reason, the mirror shield. Getting the mirror shield is required and is done by completing the Gibdo trading sequence, where each guy will offer a different riddle asking you to bring them a certain item. One of these items is bombs, meaning we will need to buy the bomb bag at the Clocktown shop for 50 rupees. The only other item we can't find for free elsewhere is actually the magic beans. We can get them for 10 rupees a pop from a business scrub in Southern Swamp. In the N64 version, you will need 5, which costs us 50 rupees, but in the 3DS version, you will only need 1, meaning it would only cost us 10 rupees. So depending on the version, the amount of rupees we need to spend differs. I'll be sure to include both in the final rankings. This puts the minimum rupees needed to spend at 160 on the N64 and 90 on the 3DS. Maybe deciding to not consider minigames and just assuming none of them are required to play was a bad idea, especially because our next game, Oracle of Ages, has the most required minigames in the series. The first minigame we need to play is on Tokay Island. When first getting to the island, Link will lose all his items and have to get them back in a mini Metroidvania style. One Tokay here will sell back 2 of Link's items for seeds. The specific seeds needed for the power bracelet are scent seeds, which can only be obtained by getting the prize from this Tokay's minigame that will cost us 10 rupees to play. Even though you can trade in your shovel for an item, we will need all 3 of these items for the next dungeon, making this required. Now to talk about the mermaid keys. Both keys are obtained through mini side quests that involve minigames. For starters, we have to do a Goron dance in the present for 10 rupees to get the brother emblem. Then we are given access to the target cards minigame and must get a perfect score to obtain the Goron brisket. But this game costs another 10 rupees. We can trade this brisket for a vase and the vase for some Goronade, which will eventually give us one of the keys. The other key requires us to play the target practice minigame in the past for 20 rupees, with a score above 100 giving us the lava juice. We can trade the juice for a letter and use the letter to do the Goron dance again, but this time for 20 rupees since it's now in the past. In my last video, I mentioned you would need to purchase the magic potion to give to the sick King Zora to progress through the game. However, a lot of y'all let me know of ways to get one for free. We could get lucky from a Gasha nut, or we could bump into Maple. Maple is a witch who will bump into the player after every 30 defeated enemies at predetermined tiles on the map. When you collide, items will be dropped and you can pick up your items or hers. One of the items that she can drop is the magic potion, meaning we could actually avoid having to purchase this item, which is quite expensive at 300 rupees. A last note for this game is we will want to choose Moosh as our animal companion in order to spend the least amount of rupees, since he doesn't require any rupees to be spent, unlike Dimitri who requires 150 and Ricky who requires 10. so this means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 70. On the other hand, its sister game, Oracle of Seasons, only has one required purchase and it's also a minigame. Ricky's assistance is needed to navigate our way to the Spool Swamp later in the game, but he can only help us when we get back his gloves from Blano. Blano will challenge us to a boxing match minigame that costs us 10 rupees. If we are able to beat him, we will get back the gloves. And that's about it. The last time I talked about needing the treasure map to find the jewels in order to enter Tarn Ruins, but you all let me know that they can still be obtained without the map. I guess for this game we will want to choose Ricky as our animal companion since he requires no rupees, unlike Dimitri, who you will have to buy from some moblins for 80 rupees, and Moosh, who requires spending 150 on his flute in a shop. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 10, so close to that 0 rupee club. I thought it'd be nice to also include playing through a linked game as it has a bunch of extra content and has you play through both games. The most interesting thing to consider is the animal companion. In a linked game you carry over your animal companion from the previous game, so if you do ages first you will want to choose Moosh, and if you do seasons first you will want to choose Ricky. So basically just never choose Dimitri. Other than that, there is no extra purchases that need to be made, but since you have to play both games, this means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 80. In 4 Swords, I stated that you would need the hero keys to get the definitive ending of the game. However, the keys seemingly only change the layout of the levels, so no matter what keys you have, the final boss and credits are unchanged. For this reason, we should only count the route with the minimum rupees needed, being the silver keys. By collecting 1000 rupees in each level, you can obtain the 3 silver keys and unlock the final level to beat the game. This method means you would only need 3000 rupees. Now there is an argument that this does not count towards our posed question since we do not spend the rupees in the game. It's definitely a gray area, being the only game that requires no rupees to be spent but still requires rupees in your possession. And for this reason I will include both options in the final rankings. So this puts the minimum rupees needed to spend at 0 or needed at 3000. During my last video, the Wind Waker had one purchase I talked about. When we first arrive at Windfall Island, Link is required to purchase the sailcloth in order to continue progressing through the game. It can be bought from Zunari for 80 rupees after a lengthy chat with him. But by far the most egregious thing I forgot about was the Triforce quest, and you all definitely let me know since this was mentioned in my comments a lot.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
The Triforce quest has us seeking 8 charts in the original and 3 in the HD version in order to get the Triforce of Courage. For starters, I wanted to mention spending 201 rupees on Tingle's incredible chart is completely optional, so we can save ourselves some rupees here. Additionally, one of the charts we get in both versions also requires a pair to control a seagull, so it turns out the bait bag and the Hiyori pair are needed after all, and they can be bought for 20 and 10 rupees respectively from Beetle's shop. But where the real cost comes in is deciphering the charts. For every chart, we will need to pay our good friend Tingle to decipher it. Tingle will charge us 398 rupees per chart, meaning in the original it would cost us 3,184 rupees. Luckily in the remake, since we only do this for 3, the cost goes down to 1,194 rupees. Due to the major differences, I will be sure to include both in the final rankings. This puts the minimum rupees needed to spend at 3,294 on the GameCube and 1,304 on the Wii U. And for a fun fact, the GameCube version is the only Zelda game that requires us to get a wallet upgrade to beat it, since we need to afford deciphering a chart and the base wallet size is only 200. If you guessed that 4 Swords Adventure on the GameCube was the other Zelda game with no rupees in it, you would be correct. This entry actually decides to use 4 gems the players can collect throughout each level. However, since 4 gems aren't rupees, we will skip this game and just continue on. The Minish Cap has quite a few instances where we will need to spend some rupees. When climbing up Mount Cornell, we will need to purchase 2 items from business scrubs on our way to the dungeon here. The first is the empty bottle in an area of the Chobe Highlands. It costs 20 rupees and is used to water vines, allowing us to climb up the mountain. The second is the grip ring, which is found further up and costs 40 rupees. This item allows us to scale up certain rock walls and continue traversing up. Another item is the one I talked about in my original video. The wake up mushroom can be bought for 60 rupees at the Syrups Hut, and it is used to wake up Rem, the shoemaker, so that he can finish working on the Pegasus boots that allow us to explore the Castor Wilds. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 120. As mentioned before, Twilight Princess requires us to purchase both the slingshot and the bomb bag. The slingshot is needed to escape the lengthy tutorial sequence of the game and can be bought from the Ordon village shop for 30 rupees, while the bomb bag is needed after finishing the Goron mines and can be bought from Barn Shop for 120 rupees. But there are even more required purchases to consider. After regaining our human form in Lake Hylia, we will need to get to Castletown and leave the area, but this can only be done by giving 10 rupees to Fire in order to get back on the mainland. Also, before we can enter the Lakebed Temple, we will have to get water bombs from Barnes in order to open the entrance. These bombs will cost us 30 rupees and are required since chests will never give you bombs not in your current bomb bags, and any additional bomb bags that you get will have regular bombs by default. I did want to mention, right before the first dungeon, you will need to get some lantern oil since a monkey forcefully wastes all of it, but luckily we can steal it from Churl's shop. Not the most ethical thing to do, but it is unfortunately the cheapest and saves us from spending any more rupees. And one thing we can't skip, however, is the sky cannon repair. In order to get into the city in the sky, we will need to have Fire fix a cannon, and he will charge us another 300 rupees for it. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 490. After wrongfully placing the Phantom Hourglass in the 0 Rupee Club, you all let me know of some of the purchases that need to be made in this game, mainly being the upgrades to your ship. The cannon and the salvage arm both bar access to a dungeon and must be obtained by buying them from Edo. The cannon can be bought after the first dungeon to blow up some rocks leading to the next area for 50 rupees, while the salvage arm is needed to retrieve the Sun Key in the ocean and give us access to the Temple of Courage. The price for this varies from 200 to 1000 rupees though, depending on how loudly you shout for it. Since we're spending the minimum rupees though, we can assume to buy it for 200 rupees. One other thing I found in my research though is on Goron Island. We must gain the respect of the Goron Elder Big Goron, and in order to do so take an initiation quiz. For some reason he will charge us 20 rupees for every attempt at this quiz. So this means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 270. After digging deep, I have determined that Spirit Tracks is indeed in the 0 Rupee Club. My biggest leads seem to be purchasing the bomb bag, but upon careful investigation, every mandatory use of a bomb has a bomb flower or a rolling phantom nearby to use instead, and the only other instance of potentially needing to spend rupees is with the Mega Ice. We are required to bring some ice to the Gorons to reunite the city folks and can get this from the guy at Anuki Village. He will at first sell it to Link for 25 rupees, but if we reject this offer over and over, he will reduce the price and then eventually just give it to us for free. So this means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is still 0. And the trend continues in Skyward Sword, with no reason to shell out rupees in this game either. The only instance would have been the shield, which is technically optional as it just makes certain enemies and bosses easier to handle, but even then, we will get one wooden shield for free from Olin before departing on our adventure. So this means the minimum rupees we'll have to spend is also still 0. When talking about A Link Between Worlds, it's important to mention its rental mechanic. As you play this game, you can rent items or buy items from Ravio, and because of this, I will include both scenarios in the final rankings. For both situations, we will still be required to buy the Smooth Gem and the Bomb Flower. The Smooth Gem can be bought from the street merchant after the shady guy bumps into us on our way to Zora's domain. It will cost us 200 rupees to buy the item, which we can use to give back to the queen in exchange for the flippers. The bomb flower can be bought from this guy for 200 rupees as well, and is needed to access the Swamp Palace dungeon. All the items Ravio sells except the boomerang are required for us to purchase at some point, but the bow, tornado rod, and hammer must each be rented for 20 rupees before being able to buy them. This is because we can only buy items after getting the 3 pendants of virtue. Luckily though, the bow is rented for free the first time, so as long as we don't die, we can save ourselves from spending rupees on it. Now if we were to buy all the items, we will want to buy either the fire or ice rod first, since your first purchase is half off and these are the most expensive items. To save you all the math, buying every item from Ravio would cost 6,600 rupees, whereas renting the remaining items would only cost 350 rupees. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 790 or a whopping 7,040. Rupees serve 2 purposes in Triforce Heroes, and let's just say they are both completely optional. You can use them to buy random materials from the street merchant, or use them to order costumes that give Link special abilities. Both these avenues are not required, and the entire game can be beaten with the original outfit you begin with. Therefore, another entry in the 0 Rupee Club, as the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 0. Back at the beginning of the video, I said we would assume the main quests were completed, and it's for these next couple of games that I worded it that way since they all have multiple. Technically, since you don't need to beat any of them in Breath of the Wild, it could join the Zero Rupee Club, but as mentioned in my previous video, in one of the quests we will be forced to purchase the Gerudo clothes from Villia for 600 rupees. Since it's the only way to enter Gerudo Town, this becomes a required purchase. More surprisingly though, in the Find a Fairy Fountain main quest, we have to pay 100 rupees in order to get the picture we need to complete this task. Luckily, since the other fairies are relegated to side quests, this is the only one we are required to get access from in the main quest. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 0 or 700. Unlike Breath of the Wild, in Tears of the Kingdom, whether you go straight to Ganon or complete every main quest first, you will never need to pull out your wallet to beat this game. The worst that can occur is being improperly dressed for certain climates, but with materials that are easy to find, let's just say this game is for sure in the Zero Rupee Club. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 0. With Echoes of Wisdom being our latest game in the series, it got rid of optional main quests, so in beating the game normally, all the main quests should be completed as you progress. And to my surprise, when I came upon the Gerudo region, I found a required purchase. In order to reach the Gerudo Sanctum, we will need to prove ourselves to the Gerudo Chief by completing some tasks. One of these tasks involves bringing a smoothie to some Gerudo soldiers, and making a smoothie from the business scrubs requires us to spend 10 rupees. This means the minimum rupees we will have to spend is 10, tied for the fewest of the games that require spending rupees. And now we have done it, a proper report of the minimum rupees that are required to spend for each mainline Zelda game. Just like last time, I'll be showing each game ranked from lowest to highest while I do my little outro here. Thank you all so much for your support on the last video. I wanted to give this topic the proper research it deserved due to the high interest it received. And huge shout out to ZeldaDungeon.net for their website walkthroughs. That was my main resource in finding every instance of spending rupees. If y'all want some similar videos related to Zelda research, feel free to let me know what you want to see in the comments below. I read all my comments, so I'll appreciate any suggestions. I'm still working on that game dev video, so stay tuned and feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to check out my last video and notice all the things I missed, you can click here. But that's all from me, y'all. Take it easy. Bye.